The following is a Spirit Street production.
All right. The Big 12 is really, really intriguing this year. Some of those non-conference games that are actually, against conference opponents, it's a little tricky. The one thing about the Big 12, though, is that parity is going to be a big part of this conference, but good parity. A lot of teams that are really good football teams from top to bottom, which means we're going to have a lot of good football games this year. Well, that's what we're looking at today, people. We're going to take a look at the top 10 list, my top 10 list of the best non-conference games and the top 10 list of conference games. So we'll take a deep dive into that as far as what we're going to look at. We appreciate everybody being here. Again, this is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Big 12 Insiders. This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, here with Tim Fitzgerald. Fitz, how's it going today?
Good, brother. Good. Our show yesterday got some legs. It's a hot topic. We'll have more on that later in the week as this Florida State Clemson stuff just continues to heat up. Brett McMurphy with a story today, but we'll get to that later in the week. I love this show. Your top 10 lists. We're going to have some fun with this.
Yes, absolutely. So again, we are talking about the top 10 non-conference games. And again, there might be a game in there where you're thinking, come on, Big B, they're in conference together. But because of scheduling and because of the immediate, basically, implosion of the Pac-12, couldn't get all these games get these games changed around, I should say. Yep. So there might be a game in the non-conference that are against conference foes. And then also we're going to take a look at the top 10 list of actual conference games. Again, this is my list. I appreciate everybody that joins in and participates. Look, leave those comments. If you disagree, that's fine. Nobody's being disrespectful in the comments. I like going back and forth with you guys. I love it. So I appreciate all the feedback that you guys give, man. So let's dive into this list here, Fitz. So talking about non-conference, first game, I've got Texas Tech at Washington State coming in at number 10. Now, the reason that I have that is because, look, Texas Tech, last year, a lot of people had them as a dark horse to get to Arlington. First couple of games right out of the chute, kind of fell right on their face. This is an opportunity for them to get back. This game's on the road. I know people are going to say, well, come on, B, Washington State, it's the Pac-12. There's only them in Oregon State. But I think Washington State's still a good football team, and I think this is a good measuring stick. And again, for Texas Tech, the game's on the road. So big measuring stick.
One. Yeah, Big B, I love this list. I love that Texas Tech is playing Washington State. They tripped over themselves early last year, as you mentioned. I wish the Big 12 would play Oregon State and Washington State more. Mm-hmm. I know Kansas State has them both coming up on non-conferences. But if those teams have slots and you're in need of something, fill it in. I wish Kansas State and Arizona had broken their agreement and gone with those two schools, but they didn't.
Right. Well, and here's another thing. As we all know, that this wonderful world of realignment, although you think Washington State and Oregon State aren't going to have a spot in the Big 12, who the hell knows, Fitz? I mean, they could end up, give it 18 months. If it even takes that long, they might actually end up in the Big 12 anyway. So I think this is a really good game for Tech, by the way, anyway. Yeah. Next, number 9, West Virginia at Pittsburgh. Look, backyard brawl. This one you could have said could be higher on the list.
Right.
And maybe it should be higher on the list. I have it at 9. Big time rivalry game. Again, I think West Virginia is better than Pittsburgh, and that's the reason I don't have it higher, because I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how good Pittsburgh actually is. But again, rivalry game, anything can happen. I got this one at number 9.
Again, both of these teams at 9 and 10 for Big 12 are teams that we have kind of in the middle of the pack that could climb up into the upper tier. Winning these games is an important step of that.
Yes, absolutely. Again, another thing that we've talked about, and we'll probably continue to talk about on this show, Big 12's got to go outside the conference and beat these teams. Now, Pittsburgh obviously is in the ACC. They're not in the SEC or Big Ten, but you can't stumble. Just like you mentioned, you can't stumble to teams like this. Again, Power 4 schools, you got to be able to go win, even though it's a rivalry game. Next on the list at number 8, this one to me is a trap game.
Mhm.
North Dakota State and Colorado. First game of the year for Colorado. Look, Colorado's supposed to be better. We're going to find out how physical of a football team they are. I'm not saying North Dakota State could come in the Big 12 and compete. I'm not saying that. But I'm also not saying that they're just going to be absolutely awful. But what I do know is they're going to play fundamental football. They're going to play physical. They're not going to make mistakes. So we're going to find out how good Colorado, maybe not how good Colorado is, but we're going to find out what kind of a physical team Colorado is and how disciplined they are, because to beat North Dakota State, you're going to have to be that.
Yeah, this will expose Colorado. They might win, but get exposed if they're not very disciplined and put some stuff on film others can take advantage of. And when you're bringing this many guys in through the portal 2 years in a row, I would think it'd be kind of hard to be completely cohesive and ready to go in game one.
Right.
North Dakota State ain't what they used to be, but they're still pretty damn good, and they will get you if you're not ready.
Well, the one thing about at Colorado is coaching matters. And, Coach Brien constantly talks about all the NFL experience and coaching experience that they have. Well, what you mentioned about bringing all these guys in from the portal, well, to get everybody cohesive, well, the coaching is going to have to matter. So if the coaching is as good as what they're saying that it is, then they should be ready to go. There won't be any excuses. And again, if they're not, we're going to find out early what that's all about. Not necessarily how good they are, but just like you said, how disciplined, how physical of a football team. Next up.
Hold on, one other point.
Sure.
Coach Prime doesn't buy into culture. North Dakota State is culture on steroids.
Yeah.
They know how
Absolutely.
to win. They're confident. They're cohesive. They're well coached. It'll be a good test for Colorado.
Yeah, it will. Yes, it will. Looking forward to it. It's on a Friday night. It'll be one of the first games that are on TV this year. So everybody should tune into that one. Next on the list, this one, people are going to say, come on, BYU at SMU. Here's the reason I had this on the list is because I think this is a gigantic measuring stick for BYU, because SMU is going to be good this year. They are. I know a lot of people don't know about it. SMU is going to be good. They were good last year. Now they're in the ACC. They're fired up about being in the ACC. I live here in the Dallas area. That's all people are talking about, is how they got in there, raised all this money. They are excited to be playing big-time Power 4 football. And for BYU, if they're going to be better than what a lot of people anticipate they're going to be, this is a game they got to go and try to win. Go try to compete. Because if they're not ready to play, SMU will literally blow them out. That's the kind of team that they are. I think it's a big measuring stick for BYU. And one, the Big 12 Conference, again, has the opportunity. This is one that really has an opportunity, because BYU will be an underdog. And to be able to go on the road and win, I think it's just a big measuring stick and an opportunity for the Big 12 to stick its chest out.
Yep, you nailed it. Everything you said is exactly right. SMU is going to be good. SMU is fired up for, to be in the ACC for a year or two. And then we'll see what BYU has. A lot of people picking BYU dead last in the Big 12, or certainly in the bottom 3. This is a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to seeing. It might be a game, because that game's on a Friday night. The old Big 12 insiders might get a little credential and head on over to SMU to go check that game out. We'll see. We'll see what happens. At number 6, look, this one, again, it could have been higher on the list, but I like it right here at 6, Iowa State against Iowa. Look, Iowa has had their number. It's always usually a pretty good game. Hadn't been a whole lot of offense the last several years. We'll see what type of offense Iowa brings to the table. But look, Iowa State brings back a ton of players. They, again, beginning of the year, had a lot of turmoil early. And in beginning of the year was awful. Let's just call it what it was. It was awful. End of the year, not so bad for Iowa State. Actually pretty good. So maybe they build on that momentum and go to Iowa and win. Going to be tough again. Another opportunity for the Big 12 to stick its chest out. And this one will be really big if they can go to Iowa, because a lot of people, again, they believe Iowa is I always say Iowa's overrated. When you can't score 21 points in a football game at the college level consistently, you got problems. And they haven't been able to do that for the better part of 3 years. And so for Iowa State to go there and win, it'll be perceived. I think Iowa State can be a better team, Fitz, but it'll be perceived as this monumentous, upset on the road. Okay, fine. We'll take that as a Big 12 conference.
This game is kind of an oddity. It's always hard fought. I mean, they get after each other, but it doesn't always reflect what the teams are going to be like within the season.
Right.
It's kind of its own little environment. It's its own little culture there with this game. But I think Iowa State could be playoff worthy. They could play in the Big 12 championship. And while appearing in the Big 12 championship isn't impacted by this, I do think it plays a role in where Iowa State will fall nationally in perception. And we'll see if they can pull it off. I think they're good this year. I think they're going to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the national perception if Iowa State wins the game is that it was this monumentous upset of Iowa, where us in the Big 12 that follow the Big 12, we're going to know, while it might be an upset, it's not that big of an upset. Iowa State's a good football team. Number 5 on the list, look, Oklahoma State, Arkansas. Now, they used to play all the time, but people said, oh, man, these are old rivals. I'm like, well, they haven't played since I think it's like 1980 or 1984 or something like that. I don't know how you say that's a rival. I mean, it was 40 years ago. But having said that, they did used to play. And I think it's, again, another big game. Look, Oklahoma State's better than Arkansas.
Right.
We covered this a while back. A big non-conference game. It gets an SEC brand. But I'm not sure how good they're going to be. I think their coach is definitely on his last leg. Oklahoma's better. Games on the road. They got to go there, and they go win at Arkansas. It's a big game for the perception. Now, this is one where the Big 12, they're not really sticking our chest out. They're really just saying, hey, this is how good we are. Right. They not braggadocious or anything. Just, hey, we're the Big 12. We're a pretty good conference. We're going to Arkansas. We're smacking them around. This is Oklahoma State's opportunity. And for them to get some respect, because I don't think they're getting enough respect based on the season that they had last year and what they have coming back.
Of your top 6, 5 are games that are important for the Big 12 in the way they're compared to the other conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's huge.
Yeah.
Granted, I understand Arkansas isn't very good right now, but you can roll in there and overcome the pig sueys and win. It's huge. This will be a fun game. This will be a fun game. And I'm not sold on Oklahoma State this year, but I think they're going to win this game. I really do. And if the Big 12 out of these 5 games in the top 6 that are against teams like this, if the Big 12 can go 3-2, great. If they go 4-1 or somehow 5-0 in these games, it'll really help the perception of the conference.
Absolutely. Coming in at number 4, huge game. Week 2, Colorado and Nebraska. A lot of people think that Nebraska has turned the corner, that Nebraska is going to win 8 to 9 games this year. Well, if that's the case, Colorado got to go there and win. Again, against a Big Ten opponent. A lot of people think are going to be better. And we're not going to know everything that we need to know about Colorado. Again, they might get exposed a little bit the first week against North Dakota State, but North Dakota State is not Nebraska. Let's just put it like that. They're not going to have the same type of athletes that Nebraska has. This is going to be a tough game for Colorado. We're going to find out a lot. We thought that we found out a lot last year. Nebraska turned out they had absolutely no quarterback. They had quarterback issues all season long. And it turned into a disaster. Give Colorado credit for ended up whipping their tail. Are they going to be able to do that this year in Lincoln? A lot of bad blood, going back and forth during the week last year. We'll find out. Again, this is a big stepping stone for Colorado.
I'm just going to say I love that they renewed this series. I love it. This was a pretty heated rivalry in the early Big 12 because keep in mind, Oklahoma had moved to the other division so that they and Nebraska weren't playing every year, but Nebraska and Colorado were in the same division and they were going at it.
Yep. Well, the one thing about this too is, and I'll say this plainly, both these programs took a nosedive when they left the Big 12. Now, I'm not saying that they were on top of the world or anything like that before, But I know for an absolute fact when they left, they took a nosedive, especially Colorado. So Colorado came back. I love the rivalry. They need to keep it going because, like you said, it was a big time rivalry for years, a Big
Yeah.
8 rivalry. When Colorado really became good, they challenged Nebraska and kind of took that mantle away from Oklahoma. When Oklahoma went through some lean years, Colorado was there to step up and actually won a national title and was really, really good for several years. So good to see. Would be a good test week 2 as to really good football. Number 3 on the list, again, a game that I think could have been higher, but I like the 2 that we have above it. Arizona at Kansas State. Again, hey, B, what are you talking about? They're in the conference. However, they couldn't get the conference schedules changed in time. They just couldn't find opponents. Maybe they didn't even want to really try to find opponents. Like, we got the game scheduled. Let's just do it. They did. Yep. It's a Friday night game, week 3. We'll find out a lot about both. This will be a good test for both of them. I think Arizona comes in a great quarterback. Kansas State breaking in a supposedly a great quarterback. We'll see what happens. But I think this is one of the better Big 12 non-conference games this season. Arizona going to Manhattan, Kansas.
This is a weird game because it's non-conference, but it also kind of feels like the start of the conference.
Correct.
And in fact, it's Friday night, and Fox Fridays will kick off. This will be their first Fox Friday game in that new time slot. So the Big 12 gets the debut slot. It'll go mostly Big 10 after that until Utah UCF will wrap it up. But it's going to be a big stage for both teams, and I'm glad the game's in Manhattan if you're a K-State person, because Arizona, Noah Fafita is the real deal, and this is going to be a big test.
Yes, absolutely. Going to be a huge test for both teams. Both teams. Arizona's got a new head coach. Kansas State breaking in a new quarterback, new offensive line. We'll see what happens. But again, great. And like you mentioned, Fitz, kind of the kickoff to the conference. So it'll be a great way to do that. Number 2, UCF, Florida. Lord have mercy. Now, Florida has hit some lean years, haven't been as good, but they were still recruit like crazy. Now, we can talk about the coaching on whether the coaching is any good. We'll find out there. I kind of think Billy Napier, I think this may be, if they can't figure it out this year, I think they're going to move in a different direction. Having said that, we'll see about UCF. A lot of transfer portal, good recruiting class, bringing in a new quarterback. Gus Malzahn, I like him as a head coach, but tough to go play at Florida. Tough playing in the swamp.
Yep, this is a huge game in so many levels. For UCF, screw the Big 12. They want to win the bragging rights in their state.
Absolutely.
And it would be huge for the Big 12 if they did. UCF's another team that I see as a possible surprise contender in this conference. So this game could be a rocket ship launch. Thank you, UCF, for that analogy. Right into the season, the rest of the season, because this would be enormous for the Knights and the Big 12.
Right. It's also week 6, Fitz. It's not, one of the first early 3 games. It's week 6 of the season. I don't know if it's the 6th game per se for each team, because I think there's a bye week in between there, but it's week 6. So it happens a little later. UCF has a conference game before they play Florida. Like I said, I love the matchup. Big measuring stick for UCF. If they can win this game, again, another opportunity for the Big 12 to go to an SEC supposed power. They're talking about Florida might be back and all that stuff. Well, if they are, and UCF can go there, not just hold their own, but win, big props to the Big 12. And then number 1 on the list, as far as non-conference games, Penn State right out of the gate going to West Virginia. Penn State, again, is supposed to be really good. They're going to be ranked in the top 10 to start the season. West Virginia coming off a great season last year that nobody saw coming. A lot of people are saying that the schedule guides, gave them some wins and gave them a gift last year. Maybe you buy that, maybe you don't. You still got to go win the games, man. You still got to win the games. So West Virginia had a good year last year. Huge measuring stick. Again, they can win this game. I know the game's at home, but you win this game against Penn State. This will say a lot. Number one, about Neil Brown. Two, about where the West Virginia is for the season. And number three, about the Big 12.
I agree. Let's look at this top 10. That's easily the number one game for me. If the Big 12 can win that game, it's absolutely enormous, because that is a direct measuring stick against one of the programs considered to be foundational to the Big 10. I mean, they certainly have been in their top three. They'll probably still be considered in the top five with the new additions. But here's that top 10 list. And I love it. There's one other non-conference game with conference opponents. Utah and Baylor hook up, but we didn't put that in this top 10. I like this. I'm going to be honest here, though, Big B. I think moving forward, the Big 12 needs to get really aggressive in the non-conference scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be fighting this perception that they're lesser than. They're lesser than the SEC. They're lesser than the Big 10. And maybe it's not a perception. Maybe it's reality. The only way you find out about reality is signing some home and homes with those teams. Now, I'm not talking, Ohio State. I'm talking get in there and go play Wisconsin or Minnesota or, solid teams and see where you sit.
Yep.
And I think that's what this conference needs to do. And I know people are scheduled out well in advance, but they might want to reconsider some of this, because playing these conferences is enormous to help build that new Big 12 brand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like we talked to the executive director, for the college football playoff at Big 12 Media Days, Rich Clark, and we mentioned to him, about some of the schools playing 10 Power 5 game or Power 4 games, and he, basically just came out and said, yeah, if they're playing these teams. Now he did always preface it, if you win. And I'm like, well, strength of schedule doesn't always mean you have to win every game. And he kind of made it sound like, well, you need to win every game. Well, everybody's not going to win every game. That's not how this works. But having said that, you're 100% right. You got to go schedule these teams. And if that means you're playing 9, if that means you're playing 10 Power 4 schools, then that's just what it means. And whether it's Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or Oklahoma, whoever it might be, you got to go schedule these teams and then go try to beat those teams. I think that's part of it. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll look at the other side of this as far as the top 10 or my top 10 Big 12 games of the season once we get a word from our sponsor, Synergy Financial Partners.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders again. This is Big B, Brien Hanley, along with Tim Fitzgerald. So, Fitz, we covered the non-conference the first half. Now we got conference games. What are the top 10 conference games this season? According to me, this is my list, people. And again, as always, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But more importantly, comment, because I like going back and forth with you guys. You guys disagree. It's okay to disagree. Nobody agrees with everything on here. So I appreciate all of that and the support that you've given to Big 12 Insiders. But let's get into this a little bit. So at number 10, Oklahoma State against Colorado. I think this one's later in the season. I think Oklahoma State's going to be playing to see, possibly playing to get to Arlington. We're going to know pretty much about both teams by this time. I think Oklahoma State's better than Colorado. I definitely think the coaching is better, but the game is on the road. And here's the caveat to all of this. Is Colorado going to turn the corner, Fitz? Have they turned the corner with the infusion of talent, the infusion of transfer portal players? Will it work? Will it work? And by this time, we're going to know whether it worked or it didn't. Again, we're barring injury and all that stuff. We're going to know a lot about both of these teams. But I think this is a very, very pivotal game for both as a measuring sticks on where they're currently at during the season.
This is an opportunity for Colorado to elevate.
Yes.
Now, we don't know what they're going to be coming into this game in terms of record, But to take on a team that just played for the Big 12 title a year ago, and many expect to return to Arlington, and pulling off that win would be huge for Coach Prime and the Buffaloes.
Yes, absolutely. At number 9, Oklahoma State again against TCU. And just what you said earlier, as far as an opportunity to elevate, TCU has to have just a horrible taste in their mouth after 2 years ago going to the national championship game, and then last year having the season that they had. Again, an opportunity for them to say, you know what, last year was a fluke. We are not that program. We are better than this. What better way than to go and beat a good Oklahoma State team?
You're right. I think TCU suffered from quarterback change. Sometimes you get a quarterback like Max Duggan who's just carries the whole team.
Yep.
Lifts up everyone. And that's what he did. Not saying that the talent around him wasn't good. It was elite.
Right.
But then last year with the change of quarterback, they just never found their groove. And getting on that early, I think is going to be enormous for TCU. A lot of people feel like the Frogs will be back. This is a big measurement of that.
Absolutely. So at number 8, Kansas State going to West Virginia. I mentioned earlier in the show, West Virginia, kind of missed some of the better schools in the Big 12 last year. And it's true. They did. Now, you still got to win the games, but they did miss the better teams in the Big 12. Well, they're not missing them this year. Kansas State was a good team last year. I suspect they're going to be a really good team again this year. Them going on the road, though, look, it's hostile going to Morgantown. It's a tough place to play. Beautiful setting, great football atmosphere, college football atmosphere, but hostile nonetheless. But you guys know, you guys that watch the show, I love hostile. So nothing wrong with being a hostile place to play. I think a good measuring stick. It's also going to be a really good football game, Fitz.
I agree. Some of my favorite fans in the Big 12 are in Morgantown. They're just great.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, new Big 12 schools, if you have a chance to go to Morgantown, do it.
Yes.
It's worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a tough environment. And this is interesting for Kansas State because the week before they're in Boulder and then they go to Morgantown. So they're kind of on the elevation tour for this season's road games. They also play in at BYU. So will they be able to handle back-to-back road games at elevation? And I know that's not always thought of as a big factor, but it can be. And at this point of the season, K-State's got this weird gap in their schedule where they don't have many home games in the middle of the season. So winning these games is huge for both programs in this game. And it's certainly a game West Virginia can pull off.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, West Virginia, if not that they need to legitimize their season from last year, because they don't need to do that. They won the games, but it would go a long way to saying, hey, guys, last year wasn't a fluke. Like Kansas State came in here and we smacked them around. So if that were to happen, like I said, it gives a little bit more legitimacy to what they did last season. Number 6, Iowa against Kansas in Arrowhead. Now, again, Kansas is one of those teams where a lot of people think they're going to be really good. I'm one of those people that believe Kansas is going to be really good because of their quarterback. If he stays healthy, this is one of the best teams in this conference. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Iowa State, we've talked about how good we think they're going to be. They bring a lot of people back. The game is going to be in Arrowhead. Now, technically, this game is a Kansas home game. But if you know anything about the Big 12, you know that Iowa State travels to Kansas City very well. If you don't know, just go to a Big 12 tournament. Just turn on any Big 12 tournament game that Iowa State's been in, and you know how well they travel. The game's in Arrowhead. I've said this from the beginning, Fitz, when you found out this on the schedule. I would not be shocked if this game is a 50-50 split as far as crowd participation. I would not be shocked at all if half are KU fans or half are Iowa State fans. That's how good Iowa State travels. I'm really looking forward to this football game.
KU playing in Arrowhead this season for their conference games, it's such a bigger venue than what they normally play in that I think they're going to have a lot of empty seats through the year. There won't be many for this game.
Nope.
Iowa State fans will buy those tickets. They will be there. Another one of my favorite fan bases in the Big 12. These people just travel. Kansas City is Cancun for these people. They just flock to it like it's spring break. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, I have this as your number 7 game. I think you said 6 earlier.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry. Yeah, number
yeah, that's
7.
right. Okay. Yep. So this is going to be a fun one. It's just going to be fun.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now at number 6, I've got UCF against TCU. Big matchup. A little earlier too. Than maybe not normal, but it happens a little earlier. I like this matchup. Again, two teams that are kind of fighting for respect. UCF, because they thought they were going to have a good season. Quarterback gets hurt last year. Things kind of tumble out of control. They forget how to tackle, trying to get the legitimacy back. TCU, again, we already mentioned last year, they're trying to prove that it was a fluke. I think these are two teams that can be on the rise in the Big 12. I love this matchup. I think there's going to be a lot of offense in this game.
UCF came into the conference last year, incredibly confident, as they should be, because they've been a really good program, and kind of got hit upside the head. Yeah, they had a quarterback injury. That happens in the Big 12 quite a bit. But as you mentioned, we talked about TCU earlier, trying to get back on their feet from a year ago. This is a great opportunity for UCF to prove its worth and TCU to prove its back.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the last one before we take our final break here, number 5, we've got Kansas going to Morgantown, taking on West Virginia. Again, another stepping stone for West Virginia to be able to prove that they belong. Kansas, again, I just believe they're going to be really good. But that hostile environment down in Morgantown, it's nothing to mess with, especially when West Virginia is really good. And I don't know if they're going to be really good, but I think they're going to have a good football team this year. And that crowd will be humming down there. It's just an incredible place to play, but it's going to be one of the better games in the Big 12 Conference this year. It really is.
I think both Kansas and Kansas State, in fact, everyone who goes to West Virginia this year, is probably praying for a morning game when the crowd's less fueled up. If you're going in there at night, just like going to Ames, it's really rugged. And this is a big test for KU going on the road.
Absolutely.
And I love your list. I absolutely love it. We're going to save the top 4 for the next segment, but those are good games, man. And I don't care if national people or people outside the Big 12 don't understand how good these games are, but they'll learn. They will learn that this conference is wildly entertaining from top to bottom.
And another thing that we'll learn, the new schools that are coming in, they're going to learn that whether they have any trepidation about coming into the conference or not, once they get in and they start going to these venues, they're going to say, you know what? This is what we signed up for. This is what we were looking for. So going to take our last break here before we reveal the final 4 games, the best games of the Big 12 Conference this season. One word from our partners, Synergy Financial Partners. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. For our final segment here, we are breaking down the top 10. First, we did non-conference. Now we're doing the conference games. We are at number 4 on the list. Let's jump right in here, Fitz. Arizona at Utah. Pac-12 foes, familiar with each other. Arizona, good football team. Utah, I think they're the best in the conference this year, or supposedly going to have the best team in the conference. That's who I picked to be the top team this year. This is going to be a good football game. Again, familiar surroundings, but I wonder if anything changes because of the conference affiliation, Fitch. Sometimes things change. I'm just not sure. I just think this is going to be a physical football game with two teams that are familiar with each other, and they're just going to get after it.
I agree. I love that this game is now part of the Big 12.
Yes.
So many games when I would look at the Pac-12 schedule, I'm like, and maybe that's the same thing people do when they look at the Big 12. But I really felt, backed up by the crowds that wouldn't show up for games.
Absolutely,
there'll be a huge crowd in Salt Lake City for this game, and it'll be fired up crowd. I am really excited. This is part of the Big 12.
Absolutely. Next on the list at number 3, Oklahoma State goes to Manhattan, Kansas, taking on Kansas State. Going to be an incredible football game because I think both teams are going to be good. Last year, this was kind of the kickoff for Oklahoma State for them to become a good football team. You know, they got ahead of they got smacked around a couple of weeks early in the season, got just embarrassed at home by South Alabama. Then they have a bye week, and then they go off and they run off these games in a row. And that Kansas State was the first of those. And Ollie Gordon really jumped onto the scene against Kansas State and was kind of his kickoff to the Doak Walker Award. And I think Kansas State is kind of looking at this like, okay, we didn't play our best game. Oklahoma State was way more physical than what we were. That was evident on both sides of the football. I think they're going to have something to say about that this year. I just think it's going to be a whale of a football game.
Hey, you look back 2 years ago, Kansas State absolutely destroyed Oklahoma
Yes,
State
they
in Manhattan. Oklahoma State got revenge. Big B, I kind of feel like as we get into the Big 12 deeper and deeper, this series is going to start to pick up some traction. Now that Oklahoma is gone, Oklahoma State doesn't have that. I think between Tech and Kansas State, you're going to see those games go up in value tremendously for the fans and for the program. And this is huge for both teams. It's fairly early in the season to establish what's going on in the old Big 12, the original Big 8 schools, and who's the best out of that, because it's a pretty tough group here with K-State, KU, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State. Now Colorado coming in too, but those 4 schools are going to be fighting for the pecking order.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't create rivalries. I know we had a show a couple of weeks ago talking about rivalries, and I think a lot of people got sideways on us thinking that we were trying to create a rivalry.
No.
Well, the conferences can put the teams together. The teams got to create the rivalry.
Right.
We're just saying, hey, this would make good for a rivalry. Now,
Yes.
you guys go out there and make it happen. Well, same thing here. If they continue to pit these teams together, not to mention they've played each other for a really long time, yeah, I think this can become one of those interconference rivalries that we're talking about. Next on the list, number 2, KU going to Kansas State. Look, a lot of KU fans thought that KU could have beat Kansas State last year if they just had their backup quarterback. Instead, they were playing their number 3 quarterback, and the game came literally down to the wire in Manhattan or in Lawrence. This game is going to be in Manhattan. I know it because I've heard it. I got a ton of KU friends that think, yeah, we're better than Kansas State. This is the year they're going to beat them. 15 years in a row, it's tough to go to Manhattan, Kansas and win. Now you're trying to end a winning streak of 15 years on the road against a team that you know is going to be good, going to be physical. It's going to be tough for KU to go in there and win.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. Rarely is this game a good matchup, because if you're familiar with the history of these two programs, it is rare when they're both good at the same time. Exceedingly rare. I think you got to go back to 1995 to find the most recent tangible game where both teams were ranked. And I think both teams will be ranked in this one. KU is going to be good. Jalen Daniels stays healthy. It's a problem for the rest of the conference because they could be in Arlington. And this game's just, if Lance Leipold wants to declare they've turned the corner, this is the game they win.
Absolutely. Because again, your in-state rival, you haven't beat them in almost 2 decades. I mean, that's forever. At some point, you got to win this football game. And again, it's not one of those where we could lose every game and just beat Kansas State. I don't think KU wants that because you're not turning the corner if that's the way you look at it. But turning the corner also encompasses beating your rival. That's a good team that you haven't been able to beat. That is turning the corner, and I think that's what Kansas would be looking to do. And Kansas State is just looking to say, you know what, we're a better program than you are. We have been for 30 years. We're going to continue to be a better program than you are, and that's how they look at this football game.
Yep.
So, and going to number 1 on this list, Fitz, I don't think it's, to be honest with you, I don't think it's really up for debate. There might be a lot of people that think Kansas might be number 1. I don't think so. This is early season matchup. It is Utah going to Oklahoma State. I think by far, and even though it's early and we don't know how the season's going to turn out, if we're just estimating, which is clearly what we're doing, I think this is the best game in the Big 12 conference this year. Utah will go to Oklahoma State and understand what it's like to play in T-Boone Pickens Stadium. It's incredible. Get into that environment. This will kind of be, I don't want to say their baptism into the Big 12 conference, but it'll be their first big test in the Big 12 conference and going on the road there. I think this is a huge game. Both teams are going to be really good. I love that it's early in the season too. I like that fact that we don't have to wait all year for this to happen. It happens early.
Well, Utah fans have been pretty emphatic with the idea that they're going to run this conference. This is the game where they get to prove it.
Yes.
If you go into Oklahoma State and win, that's always tough. But if you do that, I'll buy in much more. Just wait until you see this environment again. Big B, one of my favorite fan bases. The paddles are one of my favorite traditions in all of college football. It is one of the most underappreciated traditions, and it's hard to explain how cool it is when you hear those paddles whacking against the side of the stadium. It's a cool place to play, and the fans are on top of you. Literally. There's about 5 yards between the sideline and the wall.
Yes.
And by the way, Utah, if you're sending photographers or TV, pick an end. You can't go from one end to the other because there's no space to walk behind the benches. It's that crowded. They're on top of you. It's an amazing place to play college football. I love the stadium. This is an exciting game for the new Big 12.
Absolutely. And it can be a showcase. You know, like we said, Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game last year. Utah picked to win the Big 12. The game's early enough in the season. It can be a showcase game to let the country know, hey, the Big 12 means business. You know, these are good football teams out here. So I think it's going to be a good football game. Obviously, we don't know. Things can always get sideways. That's kind of how college football works. But as the list that we saw fits, put it back up just one more time, if you don't mind.
Yep.
You know, the list. I just believe that, you look at this list, Fitz, and people can argue about the order, and maybe there's another game on here. And again, leave all those comments. I just believe with this list of 10 in-conference games, I believe this lets the country know, you know what? Big 12's got some good football that they're going to be playing this year. These are quality teams battling it out. I just believe that this right here will let the country know that, hey, we've got something going on here. We're a good football team. We're a good
one
football
thing
conference.
The Pac-12 schools, former Pac-12 schools, need to understand is, bluntly put, by midseason or a little bit later, this list might be trash because a couple teams might show up and prove to be really good, and then their games become really valuable. We saw it last year. So it's pretty typical of how the Big 12 operates. Someone rises up and surprises you and all of a sudden starts beating people on the road and just changes the entire dynamic of the conference.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate all you guys out there. And thank you for, again, tuning in and commenting and sharing and leaving good feedback. Got some feedback earlier this morning. Somebody asking me to bring a Make It Make Sense segment that I did on a different podcast. I'm like, you know what? It makes sense. I need to start doing that. So I appreciate all that, guys. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, if you haven't already, subscribe, like, follow, comment, all that good stuff. More importantly, hit that notification bell so you know exactly when all the content comes out. We appreciate it. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.